Hi, Guy Maniac here with Disc Reader 117, and what we're going to be talking about, this is gameXcess, and what we're going to be talking about is exactly what could have made Halo Reach better. Now, we both played through, he and I both played through Halo Reach separately. I've completed my third playthrough on Legendary recently by myself, and he's just completed his first playthrough on Normal. So he and I got into this whole discussion about what could have made the story of Halo Reach a heck of a lot better. And also for the fact that since both of us have played through all the previous Halo games and we can compare it to that, we have a relative comparison for other game structures. Some people have been talking about this online. I've looked at a lot of lists, which we'll talk about in a bit, about problems. I agree with some of them. I disagree with some of them. Disc Reader will have his own opinions, which I'm sure he'll contribute to you when the time comes. And so let's get started. Actually, recently I've seen this on HaloBungie.org. A guy was posting up that the story is just not as coherent as, let's say, Halo 1 was, where Halo 1's structure basically starts off like, well, you've got a complete story, and it's all molding. Every single action in the story for Halo 1 contributes to the next logical step, finally ending with one big explosion, destruction, and that's the end of it. It's a perfect, coherent story.
As opposed to Halo Reach, which jumps you from different area of the planet to different area, trying to cover as much as Reach as they can within the time limit that they had.
That's what the guy was saying. He was saying that the story doesn't, like you just said, he was saying that the story basically doesn't follow a coherent structure. You're basically being dropped from battle to battle with some minor things about it, some very minor connections between the two of them. You finish one job and then you're off doing another job, and there doesn't seem to be very much connection. There are a few between, let's say, level 3 and level 4, or maybe between level 2 you have one job to do, but that kind of has something to do with level 3. But there are throwaway levels like level 7.
It's transporting you to any part of Reach that they possibly can.
Yeah, and it seems like with the overarching story, the whole purpose of the story, and by the way, there are going to be spoilers talked about this, so we're going to talk about spoilers right now. So if you are not finished the game and you don't want to be spoiled, shut the tape off right now. It gets to be the point where you find out that the whole overarching story is that you were supposed to bring Cortana to the Pillar of Autumn.
Yes.
That was your purpose.
You're supposed to bring Cortana to the Pillar of Autumn before the Covenant ship is able to destroy Pillar of Autumn so it can get off the planet.
And with the Master Chief, with Captain Keyes, with Cortana, so that the rest of the Halo story. So basically, you were the one responsible, and this is what especially brought up after the Lone Wolf level at the very end, after the Coda, that you were the one responsible for putting the whole Halo set in motion. So that's what Bungie wanted to do. That you wanted to tell a different story. That maybe there was Noble 6 that put the whole Halo series in motion.
Noble 6 apparently is supposed to be the reason why Master Chief escaped from Reach.
Exactly. It was and the Pillar of Autumn made it off, and why everything, because Master Chief without Cortana probably never would have made it out.
Of course, on the last level, there has been a lot of people actually complaining about this, that Halo did not put in a final trench run. There was no vehicle driving the whole mission to the end.
Well, let's talk about that in just a second. I want to finish this thought first. We will talk about that in just a second, folks. But that's a very good point. But what I wanted to finish up was that the thing about it is that you don't have a coherent story building up to that. It only starts going to that story about saving Cortana until the end of level 8. Yeah. And then when you finally figure out what your purpose is, up until that point, there's really no talk about Cortana. I mean, we see Halsey for the first time, and anybody who's familiar with the Halo books is very familiar with Dr. Halsey and what her importance is to the Halo story.
She started the Spartan 2 project.
Right, she was really responsible for bringing the Spartan 2 project. She created the Master, she created
modular armor.
Monier.
Monier? Okay.
It's pronounced Monier.
What's it, French?
No, it's Greek. Actually, no, it's Norse, I believe.
Okay.
It's Nordic because it comes from the god Thor.
Okay.
It means his hammer. His hammer's name was Mjolnir. So I believe it's Norse because Thor's a Norse god. By the way, if I'm incorrect, just post a little comment on the bottom and tell me otherwise. But I'm pretty certain since it's Mjolnir from the Norse, it has to have been Norse.
But what we were talking about is that they made the first level, you discovering that the Covenant is on Reach. Second level, working your way to Dr. Halsey. And then the final level is delivering Cortana to Pillar of Autumn.
In between that, you're basically just doing odd jobs to save the planet, and you know it's going to fall anyway. It would have worked better for a story if the whole story would have revolved around you protecting Cortana, or at the very least, you get hints of the protection of Cortana up until that point logically. it doesn't work. It kind of works at the very end. It was a goodie for beating that very difficult end of level 8, which I later learned on Legendary how to beat it much easier. But it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work for me.
It's not even that. If they even endorse the fact that the characters in the story, besides Dr. Housley, knew Reach definitely was going to fall, that had no chance of surviving, it would have actually helped out the story a bit.
It would have, and I agree with that. So let's talk a little bit about what you were just saying earlier about the trench runs. There's also some things that actually don't add up to Halo canon and stuff like that. And one of my complaints was the trench run. I thought the last level, right now I'm kind of referring to level 9, but I know that canonically it's level 10. But that's because the first cutscene was basically considered the first level, and it wasn't really, because you don't ever play anything in it, so it's not really. So let's just call it level 9. I basically consider that last level, the Pillar of Autumn level, to be, it was, the first half was fun, and everything else in it was just not fun. And the reason why was because it was just, you know, you're grinding, you're fighting all these gigantic battles, and you're just like, I just had fun earlier, okay? You did this fantastic Mongoose run, and you're trying to weave your way through all of the scarabs. You know, you're trying to get through quickly. It's pulse pounding, it's everything else, and now I had to get off because that's the end of the track, and I can't go any further, and now I have to fight through all these stupid battles just like what I've been fighting for the rest of the game. Granted, they're slightly bigger, which means that they're harder, so you're adding all this extra difficulty, which makes them even less fun because they're harder. You're fighting all these guys, many of them with fuel rod cannons and overshields. And you just had fun earlier when you were doing the Mongoose run. If you had asked me, it should have ended with basically the Mongoose run. You should have ended it, you know, that's a good ending for Halo games. Halo 1 ended that way, Halo 3 ended that way, Halo ODST had that great, go on.
I think that it should have ended like ODST. Not like Halo 3 where you basically drove straight through and ended it level there. It should be like ODST, drive, stop, have a final battle, and then end the game.
And that would have worked too, I agree with that. They actually could have done that. There is a final battle very similar to that, in that you have to basically defend from waves after waves of Bruce, just like you did in ODST. But the arena just was not fun to play in. That for a final level, for a final design for like that kind of battle, didn't work for me at all. There wasn't enough ammo, number one.
There wasn't enough coverage from when they swarmed you with brutes.
Yeah, and it wasn't as big a big area at all either. So you basically got all these brutes dropping in randomly at random intervals. You got to kill all of them. You've got to also defend the area afterwards. So there's very few checkpoints. There's very few logical points in which checkpoints could actually happen. So for all you know, you could be playing for like 5-6 minutes on Legendary, get killed, and then have to go back because you didn't move around or you didn't trigger a random checkpoint or something. But also, it just wasn't a big enough area to actually have made the scene fun. And you don't get very good weapons. You get
assault rifle, shotgun,
a grenade launcher, which doesn't have
that, and Grenade launcher thing comes with 7 ammo.
Right, exactly, and it maxes out at 15. And that's all you get. You know, once those grenade launcher runs run out, you better be scrounging plasma pistols and needlers from everybody else. And that's basically all you get. You could probably scrounge off a grav hammer off one of the brutes. Good luck bringing them down. Or there's fuel rod guns being used by some of the enemies also. Those are actually probably pretty useful. That's basically all you got.
One other thing I'd like to say about Reach is the brutes. Everyone knew the brutes would be added in the firefight part of Reach because they were
it was mentioned,
But in Reach campaign, I was not expecting to see brutes, and I was mad when I saw my first one.
I have to say that I agree with that as well. Brutes didn't come in until about level 6, level 6, level 7, depending upon how you're going to call it. I did not like them. I did not like their use because they basically were elites without shields, but they were a bigger target.
Spamming you with
fuel rod guns and armor lock. And also, armor lock wasn't canonical to the brutes up to that point. I mean, you could say that there were certain moves that the elites had, like, you know, there's little dodge moves and stuff like that. The jetpack, of course. That's all canonical. We've seen them do all that stuff since Halo 1. But the brutes never, the most the brutes ever had was the bubble shields. And that was, of course, in Halo 3.
Oh, and the jetpacks.
And the jetpacks also.
Invisibility, but that's it.
Some invisibility, yes. Yeah. We also saw, of course, the elites have invisibility. So seeing them use armor lock didn't work for me either. And just seeing them at all, you know, it just didn't make logical sense. You could have used it in a firefight. You could have had a boss fight with a brute at the very end, but constant brute fighting just didn't work.
If they put in just a few hired brute people, like maybe one or two chieftains with the gravity hammer, just make sure that the brutes were in there, but they didn't have a whole big army yet.
Yeah.
It
kind of felt for me like they were kind of substituting for when they couldn't bring in the flood.
Yeah.
That's how it kind of felt for me, is that at the very beginning, like, of course you knew that there could not have been flood activity at all, because there never was any flood activity mentioned about Reach. I mean, obviously, everybody had known that, you know, well, obviously whoever's going to be in this story is either, you know, people are going to know about it. And if the flood was on Reach, forget it. You know, that would have just violated all.
It would have completely ruined it.
Yeah. So they couldn't have the flood. So it felt to me like the brutes were actually taking over for the fact that the flood couldn't have been in there, and that just didn't work.
Yeah.
You could have had the elites playing the elites, fighting the elites with the whole time was a lot of fun. You basically you can create your like overcharged plasma pistol, and then destroy the overshield, and then headshot them. That was fun. Even on Legendary, that's fun to do. It's exactly how you had to kill the elites and the brutes in ODST. It's a fun method. It's a fun method to do it. The grunts still, look for a headshot with the DMR or the pistol. That's of course fun. The grunts were never changed. That's fun.
I think the funnest part with the grunts was exploding your back and having them fly around.
That was added. That was fun. Okay, I agree with that. The fact that the methane tanks could explode on those things now, causing shock damage, depending upon if a bullet could pierce it. Fun. Excellent, completely canonical, because we see tons of
one thing I like
grunts with methane tanks in there.
Yeah, one thing I like that they added to Reach is actually putting useful guns when hunters come around. I remember back in Halo 2, for those of you who played it, you're on a small island. They drop off a drop pod that has like a battle rifle and stuff in it, maybe a couple guys, and then the Covenant dropped down 2 hunters. I literally had a battle rifle and a pistol to take out 2 hunters on this small island with barely any cover.
Yeah.
And now that they added in grenade launchers and stuff right next door to hunters.
And shotguns. Shotguns close range are actually the most vulnerable things to them in the back. I agree that's a better thing, but I think we're getting a bit sidetracked right now. So that could have made, what could have made Reach a lot better, getting back to topic, what could have made Reach a lot better than what we're trying to say overall is it had to have been a coherent story. If you could have, at the very least, ended it, point A to point B to point C to point D, you've already got a finale. The destruction of Reach. You've already got that. It's going to be in the story no matter what, and it was in the end of the story. You're going to have that no matter what. But what you got to, what they needed to have done was definitely connect the logical battles a lot better. Now there were some connections, like obviously it was logical for level 3. I think between levels, and these are the canonical levels, you go from the night mission, which is a ripoff of level 3 in Halo 1, where you basically are scouting out where this giant thing is. This cruiser, you're scouting out the cruiser, you're doing some recon for the cruiser. That was that story. Then it feds into, in level 4, you're going to try to attack the cruiser. And then, of course, in level 5, you were actually, taking that, space mission to destruction of the cruiser. And then you're fighting more random battles before that. So I understand that all of these are just basically separate stories and a whole overarching failed plan to save Reach. But when you've compared it to like great stories like Halo 1, where it's just, you meet one story, it's like, okay, you're on the Pillar of Autumn, and then you got to drop on the Halo. Regroup, save, there were some points where you had to go up to the Covenant ship, but that's because you have to save somebody. That's somebody that you've basically seen the whole level. There was a connection there. There was a connection there. And then, you're basically, then there's the release of the Flood. And then the guy gets captured again, and you gotta basically fight through a flood-infested Covenant ship. All of this completely connected. And of course it ends with the destruction of the Halo. Of course you're on the Halo the whole time. Of course it would end with the destruction of the Halo. Fantastic story, completely overarching story, flawlessly brought up to the conclusion. Flawlessly brought up to the conclusion. I would say the only other movie that was so flawless to its story point conclusion was the first Star Wars movie. The first Star Wars movie, of course, the destruction of the Death Star. Flawless, and Plinkett would agree with me on that.